Thank you. John, the people in this country making violent anti-Semitic threats, are they domestic terrorists?
I don't know that we're classifying
That's a bingo.
people as domestic terrorists for that. I mean, that's really a question better left to law enforcement. I'm not aware that there's been such a characterization of that.
Okay. The FBI director said today, the ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the United States to a whole nother level. Has the White House considered the possibility that a terrorist could be in the country right now after crossing the southern border?
Peter, we are always concerned about the potential presence on U.S. soil of terrorists coming from overseas. That's something we're always worried about.
But there was this bulletin last week. The CBP in San Diego said militants associated with the Israel-Hamas war may be potentially encountered at the southwest border.
You're talking about the San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any heartburn around here? 600,000 known gotaways just in the last fiscal year.
What? Yeah.
Is there any heartburn about leaving the border in such a condition that one of those 600,000 could be a terrorist?
So let me just break this down for you just a little bit here. First of all, I can't speak to this intelligence report that was leaked to the media. I wouldn't do that. I can tell you that we are constantly monitoring, as best we can, all ports of entry to the country.
Really?
For the potential arrival of anybody who might wish us harm. And one of the things that the president asked for in this supplemental was additional funding for border security, for like 1,500 more border patrol agents and better technology at the border. I mean, so again, we would urge Congress to take a look at that supplemental request and pass it. But if the general gist of your question is, are we taking the potential threat seriously? Of course we are.
The general gist was, is it possible that somebody who wants to commit a terrorist attack during a time of elevated threat crossed the southern border into the United States already?
I couldn't possibly answer that question, Peter. All I can do is tell you that we have remained vigilant to that potential threat.
Okay, John. Thank you. John, can you give us an update on how talks with the Qataris are going in terms of helping hostages get out?
I really am not at liberty to get into too much detail, Jeff.
Why?
What I can assure you is that we are still having discussions with our partners in the region, and the Qataris have been useful in that regard. We are continuing to have discussions about getting the hostages out.
Following up on MJ's question, the IDF has confirmed while you were standing here that the attack on the refugee camp and hospital was an Israeli one. How do you square that with what you're saying about Israel trying to avoid civilian deaths?
Again, you're getting me a little unawares here, Jeff. I didn't see that comment. I didn't see that report. So I don't want to speculate about what might have happened or what might not have happened. What I can tell you is that we have indications that they are trying. I'm not predicting that on any given day they aren't going to fail to meet their own expectations about killing civilians. Sadly, our own experience as a military over the last 20 years has shown us that even with our best intentions and all the efforts that we put in to avoiding civilian casualties, we still cause them.
Okay.
And it's tragic each and every time. But I just, without the context of this event, I'm going to be careful about what I speculate on here.
People who are seeing the numbers, and you've also said it's been thousands, is there anything more you can say besides indications? What evidence do you have that Israel is trying not to
I was just, well, it's based on literally a daily conversation that we're having with our Israeli counterparts about their goals, their strategies, and their plans, and the questions that we would hope they're asking themselves, like we would ask ourselves before embarking on military operations.
Thank you. Admiral, just to talk about the fuel situation again in Gaza, the lack of fuel, the Ministry of Health, the director there, said that essentially that they're going to run out of fuel tomorrow. I was wondering if that aligns with your assessment of how the levels of fuel are, especially when it comes to the hospitals and the generators.
It's a similar timeline that we've heard from aid organizations in the UN. It's not totally out of the scope of what we heard from other actors,
Right.
that it could be that soon.
Is that sense of trauma and sense of urgency being felt in the conversations about the need to get fuel into Gaza, especially when we're talking about hospitals, when we're talking about generators, babies on ventilators and those kinds of things? Is that sense of urgency being felt, and is it being heard by the Israelis as well?
It's
Nice.
absolutely being felt, and we have continued to communicate this with our Israeli counterparts. There's definitely a sense of urgency here.
John, a follow-up on the humanitarian pause. Given the recent comments from Prime Minister Netanyahu and kind of what we've seen in the last few days, are you getting any indication from the Israelis that this is something that they would even consider? And how much of a priority is this for the administration to get a humanitarian pause to make that happen?
I don't want to speak for the Israelis. I would tell you that they too want to get their hostages out. They too want to get those folks back home to their families, and they recognize that in order to do that safely, you're going to have some passage, some pause in the fighting to be able to do that so that they can get home safely. So in a general sense, they see the value in some kind of a localized temporary pause to get their folks back home.
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention now.
Thank you so much. On the domestic front, we're hearing from Muslim Americans and some Democratic Party activists that they're going to mobilize millions of Muslim voters to withhold votes and funding from President Biden's campaign until he works on a ceasefire for Gaza. Is the White House concerned about that? And then going to your weird crocodile metaphor
It was
about
an alligator, and I didn't think it. And it wasn't. It was Churchill, not me.
Sorry, going to your alligator metaphor about aid to Israel being isolated in that package, is it the White House's view that the U.S. can afford to fund Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and the U.S. border in one package? And then I have a diplomatic question.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Okay, well, your first one I'm not going to answer because I'm not going to get into electoral politics one way or the other. On your second question, the answer is yes. What's your third one?
Okay, just comparing the readouts of President Biden and Jake Sullivan's meetings with Saudi officials, we're now seeing a mention of Iran. Or rather, we're now seeing mention of the White House saying that they're asking the Saudis to work with Iran. Is that something that the White House is asking Tehran to do to pressure? Let me start over. Is that something that the White House is doing, asking Riyadh to lean on Tehran to show restraint? And how receptive are the Saudis?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about our diplomatic conversations with the Saudis. We have been, I think, crystal clear about the concerns over Iran and their destabilizing activities and their support for these groups throughout the region. I think I'll leave it there.
Why?